So here are my hinges. This one's the lower one, and as you can see on this one, there's a lot of play. These bushings are wore out, and the top one here doesn't have as much play. There is just a little tiny bit of wiggle, but I'm gonna go ahead and replace these hinge pins as well. The main difference between the upper hinge and the lower hinge is the upper hinge has this arm right here, and that's to keep the door open. When you open it all the way, it'll click in place, and then that'll hold it if you're on like a slight decline or something. The lower hinge doesn't have the spring. So first things first, let's start disassembling this. It's easiest to get that spring out when the hinge is in the all the way open position. Now the way to get these pins out of here, you have to always make sure you know which side is up, because you don't want to put these pins in upside down. Because if you do, they may fall out. You want the head of the pin to be on the top. You'll notice down here on this arm right here, see how there's that little tab down there on the bottom? That tab is what rides along this arm right here. So take note that that's on the bottom, and this outer piece here, it has the spring attachment on the bottom as well. So now the bottom one doesn't have such indicators, so you'll need to remember which side is the top. So punch it, stamp it, scratch it, whatever you need to do, and then make sure this arm goes in the same way. So now to get these pins out of here, you need to press them out. And if you have access to a shop press, that's the best way to go. But if you don't have access to a shop press, I'm going to show you the way to do it with your vise. You can do it with the hammer, but you want to be careful that you don't distort your hinge. You get yourself a deep socket, and this just happens to be a 5/8. It just has to be big enough to go over the head here, because the idea is you're pressing this until it gets flat here, and then you'll use a punch to go the rest of the way. Obviously, you'll need a vise that's big enough to fit both the hinge and your socket. It's a good idea to throw some penetrating fluid on there. Where is my PB blaster? This is why you put your tools away. Okay, we're hitting right there, so I'm gonna release this. Popped out quite a bit. So we just got that little bit much more to go. So now we'll have to stick a punch of some kind in there to get it to come out the rest of the way. Sheesh. Okay, that was way too hard. What I ended up doing was hacking the top of it off and then drilling a hole so I could use my air hammer with a needle punch and just kind of drive it out a little bit at a time and keep soaking it, and eventually it finally popped out. I ended up kind of jacking up the hinge a little bit, and it just took way too long, so I'm not going to do that on the next one. I'm going to go to the shop press. So you might have better results using a bench vise than I did, but what my recommendation would be is to get a shop press. If you're doing any kind of fabrication or mechanical work in your garage or shop, you should have a shop press. They actually come in handy a lot. But if you can't afford one or don't have the space for one, like I don't have the space for one, what I would say is to buddy up with your local mechanic or maybe a high school auto body shop so they would let you use it for free or even do it for you for free. But the shop press is definitely the way to go. Okay, so now that I got the old hinge pins out, I'm gonna put them in the old blaster and get them down to bare metal, and I'm gonna actually powder coat these, and then we'll put the new hinge pins in there and we'll put it all back together. I do have a little bit of work to do on this though. You see that right there? That was probably something I did when I was young and dumb and sliced right through that, so I think I'm gonna need to weld that a little bit. But you can see this hinge has seen better days. It's got a lot of rust and pitting and everything on there. So now before I go powder coating these, there's some spots where I don't want the powder to go, like on these brackets right here, where your bushings go, and those holes right there. It's a pretty tight tolerance, and since those bushings need to fit in there, you don't want powder in there. So in order to plug up those holes, you have to use special plugs, because when you're powder coating, it'll get up to about 400 degrees or so, and you need something that won't melt. So you can get these high temp silicone plugs, and they make this tape that's especially for high temp. I got this from Eastwood. This is item number 10078, and it comes with all these plugs. So I'll just do that on all 4 holes. So once the powder coating cures, now we can go back to the shop press and press the new pins in. These pins I got from, I believe, Truck Shop. It was a long time ago. You can find these also at Brothers Trucks or wherever you want. This kit comes with 2 pins and 4 bushings. So now we'll tap these bushings in there. First things first, we're going to grease the inside of this. And I'm actually going to use the pin. Swipe a little grease on there, and then you can wipe it in there. And this also coats your pin. So then you'll just take it over to your anvil, and it doesn't take much. You just kind of tap it in there, a little bit on each side, and then you'll hear a different sound when you're all the way down. So now we will put it in the hinge socket itself. And remember, this pin is on the bottom as well as the arm. As long as you have that going the right way, you're good. If it doesn't quite fit, then you can take it back to your anvil and just kind of give it a couple more taps, and then it should fit right in. And it's okay if it's a little tight. So now we'll put our greased pin back in there. You can pretty much get these in almost all the way just by hand. We'll take it to the press and just give it a couple more squeezes. And you're going to want to use a socket or a bar or some kind of tube to go over the pin, so that when you squeeze this down, you have enough room to go all the way through. And there you go. It's all the way seated. So the next step is we'll just cut off this excess here. And if you leave a little bit of a tab, that'll kind of keep it from falling out. But this is tight enough, it shouldn't fall out. So after you install the pins and you got your pieces all back together, last thing you got to do is install the spring. And the spring goes on this little tab here on the back side, as well as the moving arm. And as you can see on this one, it's a little bit sloppy. When it's open all the way, the spring doesn't have any tension on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut probably 2 coils off. And the trick to do that is you want to get yourself some dikes. And the wedge shape of the dikes will actually separate the spring just enough to kind of bend up another loop on it. Just keep working it until you get an acceptable hook on there. Then you can take your dikes and snip off the old hook. And you want to be really careful so you don't shoot your eye out. Now you can kind of wrestle it on there. They do make a spring tool for this, but I don't have one, so I'm just going to use needle nose pliers and my God-given thumbs. So as you can see, there's still just the tiniest amount of wiggle in that. I think that's going to be probably as good as I'm going to get it. So now I have to just straighten out those hinge pin sockets, because I jacked them up due to my own stupidity of not putting the bolt on the back side of the hinges. And then I can reinstall these hinges and the door, but I'm not going to install the old beat up door. I actually have a new door. Before I can install the new door, I have to pull the window glass out of the old door and put it in the new door. Yeah, a lot more work to do.